Hi, and thank you for tuning in to the Startup Visa podcast. I want to thank all our listeners for your support. I'm also grateful to the guests, colleagues, and friends who have been part of my broadcast journey. This season is dedicated to someone very special, Joel Paget. Joel was an incredible immigration lawyer. He practiced for over 50 years at the law firm Ryan, Swanson, and Cleveland. He was one of my biggest supporters and influenced my career deeply. Sadly, Joel passed away on September 27th, 2024. He was the very first guest on my very first show in 2015. His support meant so much to me. He was a mentor to many, including me, and his impact was huge. May he rest in peace. His legacy will continue to inspire for generations. Welcome to the Startup Visa podcast. I am your host, Tahmina Watson. I am an immigration attorney at Watson Immigration Law and the author of the book, The Startup Visa. This podcast is a spin-off from the book. Here, we will discuss tips and strategies to make immigration cases successful for founders, entrepreneurs, investors, and business owners. Thanks for tuning in to the Startup Visa podcast. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the Startup Visa podcast. I am here on site in New York at Columbia University with my dear friend Matthew Sawyer. Matthew, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here, and welcome to New York.
Well, I'm so grateful and excited. We are on site because we're going to be speaking on a panel later on here at the Career Design Lab.
Yes.
At the Columbia University. But we are going to talk a little bit about the work that Matthew does with immigrant entrepreneurs from all over the country. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, before we dive into that, let me just tell everybody about you a little bit. So Matthew Sawyer is a marketing and communication professional who has been teaching courses in strategic communications at Columbia University School of Professional Studies since 2016. In addition, Matthew has an active strategy consulting business and is an advisor to the Global Chamber and several accelerator groups. His first book, Make It in America, How International Companies and Entrepreneurs Can Successfully Enter and Scale in the U.S. Markets, was published by Wiley in December 22. Wow, congratulations.
Why, thank you.
Oh my goodness. Tell us a bit, I want to hear everything about the book.
Yes.
But before that, tell us about yourself. So you are a professor and an author. How did you get here?
Well, in terms of I've been a teacher for the last 10 years. It's been 10 years. First I was at Parsons School of Design, and then I came up to Columbia. And in the course of my teaching, I met a lot of people from all over the country. We have students from 40 different nations, and I also was doing some consulting work, and particularly with some international companies that were coming to the United States. And in that practice that I saw that it was really important and that there was a need for this book to talk and help people to come to the United States.
That's great. And the book is interesting, and I'm so grateful. I'm on the back of your book. You're on the back of my book. And it's an honor to have seen the book come into reality.
Right.
Because, when we met, I think you were working on the book.
Yeah, I was still doing research.
Yes. And it takes a lot to write a book. I don't think people realize how much research and motivation goes behind getting to the end of a book. What was your experience?
Well, it was several different phases. The first phase was doing research, because there was a lot in terms of finding out what people needed to know. I first did research. I talked to over 100 people to find out from them in terms of what their experience was. I identified what were those areas that people really wanted to know about, and I did a lot of book research as well. And so that took about 4 or 5 months, and then I started writing and then did more research. And the writing part of it was I enjoyed that. And what I did was I looked at each chapter as almost like being a little project. So there was one chapter about financing, how to finance a venture. There was another one about legal. We did one about immigration and everything you needed to know about HR. So each one of them, I broke it down into 12 different projects in a way. And that made it more manageable.
You know, the book is very timely, and you were compelled to write it because of what you were seeing.
Right.
But what's happened since? Because you've been traveling the world and you've been seeing the impact of the book, and what do you see out there?
Well, it's so, as you mentioned, it's just very timely, and the interest in coming to the United States has never been greater. I think part of it is there are a lot of, whether it's in Europe and other parts of the world, the economies aren't doing that well. So here in the United States, we have a vibrant economy, and it continues to do well, and that's attracting a lot of people. Plus, they also see the upside potential. So there's more need than ever, or more interest than ever before.
And I see that too, because you know, I'm an immigration attorney and I've been writing about startups and working with startups, and sometimes you think people may not necessarily want to come to the US as much as they used to in the past, but they may not want to live here permanently, but they still want to do business here.
Yeah.
And for that, they need visas, they need the guidance that you're providing. And so I don't think, you know, despite what happens in politics and culture, the business opportunities will always remain in the United States.
Right.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it is true that the image of the nation has, gotten a little bit tarnished, and, seeing in terms of, whether it's guns, whether it's violence, whether it's other things. And so that's true. But despite that, there's still such a vibrant economy, and the opportunities to really, find and live out your American dream.
I think so. I think so too. And so if anybody is listening and they're wondering what are the first few steps they need to take, what would be your top 5 tips?
Well, the tips is that, the first thing you need to do is that you really need to do your homework, to find out in terms of, investigation, and just don't come here and think you can figure it out once you're here. The other thing is you really need to be committed, because it's expensive, it requires a lot of time, and so you really need to have that full commitment. And then in addition, you need to also take a long-term perspective, because there's going to be some obstacles, there are going to be some things that happened, and so getting that traction, is going to take some time. So you need to take a long-term view. And then you need to be, realistic in terms of what are your goals and objectives, and having everyone within the company or within your family, all come together and saying, this is what our goal is, and this is what we want to achieve.
Do you need a business plan for your immigration visa, startup, or to raise capital from EB5 investors? Business plans are complex and time-consuming, but not if you turn to the experts. Pinnacle Plan Writing specializes in crafting clear and credible business plans that can be the bridge between your entrepreneurial dreams and U.S. agencies. With decades of combined experience and hundreds of successful plans submitted, Pinnacle can help get your visa on the path to success. If you're ready to take the next step, visit www.pinnacleplanwriting.com and get started today.
I think that's very true on all of those pointers. I've seen people who want to come to New York and they set up business here, but for some reason or another they can't really sustain the business here. So then they use this as a starting point, but then move somewhere else.
Right.
And having flexibility in those, plans is important. Often I've also seen people plan around their children's school year.
Right.
They really say, I need to be in the US in September, but they don't plan ahead in time because there's no controlling immigration.
Right.
And all the things that you have to do around it. In your research, when you were talking about finance and taxes, perhaps, can you elaborate a little bit? What do people need to know about that? Are they financing themselves? Are they trying to get VC funding? What are you telling them?
Well, there's a lot in terms of opportunities here in terms of getting financing, but for a lot of the companies that I've been talking to, they've been getting some, whether it's from financing from home or before they get here, and then having a pool of money to at least get started. And then once they demonstrate traction in the U.S., then that's more easily in terms of getting financing and investors. Because investors want to see traction, and they want to see, that there is this. And honestly, the longer you can wait to get that financing, the better off you are, because you can control more of the business and you reap more of the benefits yourself.
That makes sense. So when people come to you, you have a US Accelerator.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Accelerator is that it's different than other accelerators in the sense that we don't invest any money in companies. But we do is we try to accelerate their growth in terms of coming to the United States. And really one of the things that we focus in on first is in terms of doing the market intelligence. As they're first thinking about coming to the United States, what are the areas, what are the locations, what are the markets, what are the products, what are the channels of distribution? So to help them in terms of identifying all of those, and then from there, then the next phase is then looking in terms of putting together a go-to-market strategy and putting that together, and then finally is working in terms of the cultural aspects, because that's an often, getting over, and there's a lot of differences even with countries that speak English. So one of the things that I have on my team is I have people from different countries. So I have someone from Switzerland, I have someone from Belgium, someone from Latin America, someone from China, to also help in terms of making those transitions and how does this relate back to the culture and that they most know and what's different about it. And it's being able to then maneuver and navigate through that we help them in terms of carrying through that strategy.
Want to turn your startup dreams into an American reality? Is your startup struggling to hire top international talent? Unlock the future with Tahmina Watson's latest best-selling book, The Startup Visa, U.S. Immigration Visa Guide for Startups and Founders. Tahmina's essential guide simplifies the complexities of the U.S. immigration system, providing you with insider strategies to secure the right visa and fast-track your business growth. Don't let visa hurdles hold you back. Grab your copy of The Startup Visa on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever you find your books. The book is also available in Spanish. Launch your American success story today.
So you talked about helping people with go-to-market strategies and culture. Why is culture so important?
Well, culture, just because number one is that there's no one American culture. There's so many different in terms of the regions of the country. There's so many different nationalities. There's so many different markets, and so making those understanding and even the culture of business, how Americans do business. Personally, I tell people that it's actually much easier than they think, because Americans are very straightforward. They tend to tell it like it is. They tell you what is on their mind, and if you know that, that's makes it easier. Sometimes with other cultures, particularly some of the Asian cultures, that really understanding in terms of the nuances is much more difficult.
Mm-hmm. And I'd also say that, or add to that it's easier to set up a company in the US and just start working, whereas it's not quite that easy in other countries. And so, there are obstacles and barriers for people to get going. So it's great that you can guide them with that. But let's talk a little bit about immigration then, because once they have that go-to market and they want to work here, what kind of issues have you been seeing?
Well, I'm not an immigration lawyer, and so one of the things, and the book really points out, is that how you have to work with experts. But what I try to do in the book is to just overlay in terms of giving people an education, a sense of all of the pieces, so then they know what questions to ask, and to be able to look at in terms of, working with an expert about, how to do things, whether it's immigration or setting up a business, but at least giving you the overview understanding of the way things work here.
Mm-hmm. But you've been doing a lot of advocacy.
Yeah.
So tell us why that's important to you. You were recently published in The Hill.
Right.
And what was the title of the article, if people were looking? Can you remember?
It was all about H-1B visas.
Okay.
And it was
I'll find the link and put it in the show notes.
And what the argument that we had put together is that the fact that, part of it is I have so many students that I work with that are, so talented. And as you know, with H-1B visas, it's for skilled workers who've come here to the United States and have earned their education, gotten their education at an American college or university. And what's happened is that the number of visas, is only 85,000, which when the whole program was set up in 1990, it was 65,000. So the economy has grown nearly fivefold, but the number of visas hasn't. And then we desperately need skilled workers here in the United States. Look at all of the companies that have been started where you've had one founder. One of the facts in the article was about how half of all of the Fortune 500 have been started either by an immigrant or a child of an immigrant. So that's really what the country has really been built on, and so it's so important. And then on top of that, it's really important to our education system, because the American universities and colleges, which is, I'd say, one of the crown jewels of this country in terms of the best education in the world, relies on having a lot of foreign students. We have over 1 million foreign students in the United States, and if we don't offer them a good path in terms of staying here afterwards, it's not as attractive to be here.
That's true, and I think in recent times, international student numbers have been down compared to past years, and it's not good for the school system that we have, the education in institutions, but it's not good for anybody in this entire system, the student, the country, and so it is important, and I agree with you. And I don't know if you've noticed recently, the United Kingdom, understanding the problem that we have, created their own law saying if you have graduated from any of these schools, most of them were US schools, that you could move to the United Kingdom, no questions asked. And so Canada also recently, they created their own H-1B program, where they said if you are in the United States with an H-1B visa, come on over, and within 48 hours they had met their quota. So other countries are watching us, and they're sort of leaping in where we're failing. So I appreciate the article you wrote, and I hope you will continue to advocate for this, because coming from you, who is a professor, working with students and companies all at the same time, you're seeing the problems at a grassroots level, and that experience can't be substituted with anything else.
And on top of that, just in terms of seeing, just so many students who are so smart, they have so much to offer. They also really believe in the American dream, the American values. They come here seeing in terms of, land of opportunity that we have, believing in terms of liberty for all, and, it's rejuvenating the whole American spirit.
I agree. So, it's interesting. Sometimes my friends who are in my writing circles particularly will sometimes say to me, tone down the American dream phrase. What would you say to that?
Well, in my view, is the American dream is that there's so many different aspects of it, and one of the things that's wonderful is you can choose what is your American dream. Like some people choose in terms of becoming fabulously wealthy, and if that's your dream, you can go for that. Not that you're going to achieve it, but at least you can choose. Or if it's to have a wonderful family, or if it's to be a successful person that's admired, or a college professor. You can do whatever you want, and I think that's very different than in other countries. And there was also some in terms of just whether it's achievable. So there was research that was done by Pew Research that said that nearly half of the country felt that they've either achieved that dream or they're on their way to get that. And 70% said that there is an American dream out there that is available to people.
I love it, and I believe that truly.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to quote you from this from now on, that you can choose your American dream.
Yeah.
It is alive.
Right.
And that's why America will always be one of the greatest countries.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, tell people how they can contact you if they wanted to learn more about you or work with you.
Sure. Well, one way is the book, which is Make It in America, How International Companies and Entrepreneurs Can Successfully Enter and Scale in U.S. Markets. And it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the major sites. To contact me, they can get in contact with my website, which is USAccelerator.biz, and just Matthew at USAccelerator.biz.
Wonderful. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's an honor to know you, and I'm so grateful to have met you.
Well, and thank you so much for everything you've done in terms of not only for me, but for all of the people out there who are really struggling and really helping them getting through, some very difficult immigration. And, it's really an important thing. And thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Startup Visa podcast. Please rate us on iTunes or anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. We would so appreciate it. Please also check us out at watsonimmigrationlaw.com for all your startup and business immigration needs. Thank you so much.